Not Quite Dead Yet by Holly Jackson. On a crisp Halloween night in Woodstock, Vermont, 27-year-old Jet Mason felt more like a ghost than the zombie she was dressed as. A law school dropout, living with her parents, she wandered through the town's fair on the green, feeling aimless. Her past soon caught up to her in the form of J.J. Lim, her ex-boyfriend, awkward and earnest in a Chucky costume, who pleaded to talk about something important. Jet, still smarting from their breakup months earlier, brushed him off. Her escape was short-lived as she ran into her older brother Luke and his wife Sophia. Luke, the confident and soon-to-be head of the family business, Mason Construction, never missed a chance to jab at Jet's lack of direction, calling her the chief fuck-up. Sophia, once Jet's inseparable best friend before she married Luke, stood by her husband, holding their infant son Cameron, dressed as a pumpkin. The conversation was stilted and sharp, a reminder of the distance that had grown between them all. Trying to escape her family, Jet found herself in a string of unwanted encounters. She spoke with Jerry Clay, a fellow village trustee of her mother's, and then her lifelong next-door neighbor, Sergeant Jack Finney. Jack's son, the sweet and gangly Billy Finney, found her next, nervously asking her to his upcoming music gig at the local bar. Before Jet could politely decline, a drunk Andrew Smith, dressed as a clown, stumbled toward them, spewing vitriol about the Mason family and how they destroy everything you touch, before lunging at Billy. The scuffle was quickly broken up by Jack and the new chief of police, Lou Jankowski, who had Jack escort the inebriated Andrew home. Finally free, Jet headed to her parents' fundraising stall, only to find her father, Scott, doubled over in pain from his chronic kidney disease, a condition Jet shared. Her mother, Diane, sharp and critical, insisted Jet stay to help clean up. Fed up, Jet refused and walked home alone to 10 College Hill Road. Inside the large, immaculate house, she was greeted by the family's cocker spaniel, Reggie. Finding a plate of Halloween cookies Sophia had left, Jet grabbed one and settled in the living room, scrolling through her phone. It was then that she heard a rush of footsteps behind her. A sharp crack to the back of her head was followed by another and another. The world splintered and then went dark. A short time later, Billy Finney, drawn by Reggie's frantic screaming, kicked in the front door to find Jet lying in a pool of her own blood. He called 911, convinced she was dead. Jet awoke in the hospital 2 days later. Her neurosurgeon, Dr. Lee, delivered a devastating diagnosis. The attack had left her with a fractured skull, but the critical injury was a tiny bone fragment from her clivus, deep in her brain, that was now resting against her basilar artery. Due to Jet's polycystic kidney disease, her arterial walls were weak. It was a certainty that an aneurysm would form and rupture, a fatal event that would likely happen within a week. The only alternative was a surgery so risky it carried a less than 10% chance of survival. Faced with an impossible choice, certain death in a week or near certain death on the operating table, Jet listened as her mother frantically pleaded for her to choose the surgery. But Jet saw it differently. If it's die now or die later, I choose later. In that moment, she found a purpose that had eluded her for years. She checked herself out of the hospital, announcing to her horrified family and the police, "I'm going to solve my own murder." The police, led by Detective George Ecker, were already focused on one suspect, J.J. Lim, who had vanished after the fair and sent Jet a cryptic text simply saying, "Sorry," 12 minutes after the attack. Jet, however, was unconvinced. She moved in with Billy Finney, whose apartment was above the bar where he worked, turning it into her investigation headquarters. Her first break came from a letter that arrived in the mail, a notice that a $30,000 loan had been taken out in her name, secured against her beloved blue Ford F-150 truck. The police soon confirmed the money had been paid into JJ's bank account, deepening their suspicion. A second clue came from Jack Finney, who secretly showed Jet a photo of evidence from the crime scene, a single, straight red synthetic hair found under the blood. They knew JJ's Chucky costume included a red wig. Jet and Billy examined photos from the fair taken by Jerry Clay's son, Owen. They confirmed JJ's wig matched the description, but they also discovered that Andrew Smith, the drunken clown, had been wearing a nearly identical red wig. They confronted Andrew, who revealed a deep-seated hatred for the Masons. He blamed Diane for getting his daughter Nina fired from her job shortly before her suicide the previous year. He also told them a shocking secret. Scott Mason was planning to sell the family company to Nell Jankowski, the police chief's wife, not leave it to Luke. The most crucial clue from Jet's Apple Watch was the last known location of her stolen phone. At 10:56 p.m., it had pinged on River Street, before being turned off. Andrew revealed that his old family home, which he'd sold to Luke for a new Mason construction project, was on North Street, accessible only via River Street.
Jet and Billy raced to the North Street construction site. Realizing the killer could have buried the evidence in the new foundations that were poured the morning after the attack, they grabbed sledgehammers and began smashing through the fresh concrete, despite the protests of the foreman and a furious Luke, who arrived shortly after. Beneath the concrete, wrapped in a family dish towel, they found Jet's shattered iPhone and the murder weapon, a Colby brand hammer. The investigation grew more complex. Jet and Billy discovered, through the home's Ring doorbell camera footage, that Sophia had visited the house twice on Halloween while the family was out. When confronted, Sophia lied. Looking at footage from previous holidays, they saw a pattern. Sophia would visit, and footage from one visit showed her stealing a bottle of Jet's blood pressure pills, Lotrol, only to return an hour later to put them back. Breaking into her parents' house, Jet and Billy examined her father's identical bottle of Lotrol. They found the capsules had been tampered with. The medicine had been replaced with salt. Jet confronted Sophia, who confessed. She had been slowly poisoning Scott, not to kill him, she claimed, but to make him sick enough to finally retire and hand the company over to Luke. The confrontation escalated, and Sophia revealed a devastating secret she'd held for 10 years. Jet was the reason Billy's mother, Beth Finney, had abandoned her family. As a teen, desperate to get into her dream college, Jet had manipulated Beth, her teacher, into changing a grade by leveraging guilt over Emily's death. The encounter had been the final straw for the already distressed Mrs. Finney, who left town that very day. A heartbroken Billy walked away from Jet, seemingly for good. As Jet chased after him, she was arrested for the arson of the Mason construction offices, which had burned down the previous night. The evidence was a photo of her truck at the scene, provided by a witness, her own brother, Luke. It was revealed that Luke had tried to kill Jet in the fire to stop her from uncovering his extensive financial fraud within the company, which included paying employees like JJ's brother, Henry Lim, off the books. This had led to Henry suffering a severe, uninsured accident at the North Street site, leaving him crippled and partially blind. Luke had been blackmailing him to keep quiet. Jet, held in a cell with her time running out, made her one phone call to Billy's voicemail, leaving a long, tearful message of apology and love. Moved by her desperation, Billy went to the police and provided a false alibi for Jet, claiming they were together in her truck all night. Jet was released. In her final hours, Jet's focus shifted from her own murder to her sister's. She and Billy discovered an old diary of Billy's mother's from 2008. A note from the day Emily died read, "He was already wet, before." This corroborated Billy's childhood memory that Luke smelled of chlorine before Emily's body was found in the pool. Jet confronted Luke, who, at gunpoint, confessed. He had killed Emily 17 years earlier in a fit of rage after she told him Scott Mason was not his biological father. He also admitted his real father had helped him cover up the murder. In the final shocking hours of her life, Jet realized the only person who could be both Luke's father and have a motive to kill her was their next-door neighbor, Jack Finney. The night of the fair, Jack had learned from Jerry Clay that Diane had voted against him for police chief. He had then learned from Andrew Smith that Scott was selling the company, robbing his biological son Luke of his inheritance. Enraged by this double betrayal, he took the hammer from the toolkit he had given Billy and killed Jet, the person he saw as the obstacle to Luke's future. In the end, as Jet's aneurysm ruptured and she lay dying in Billy's arms, he confessed to the crime himself, wanting her to die with the peace of believing she had solved it. But in her last lucid moment, Jet smiled. She knew it wasn't him. It was the only truth that mattered. 8 days later, on the day of Jet's funeral, Billy confronted Jack, having secretly arranged for Luke to listen in on the phone as Jack confessed everything. Enraged by the truth, Luke grabbed a gun and shot Jack dead on the Masons' front porch. Jet Mason's murder was finally brutally solved.